Alrighty, so how's it going, guys? My name is Rayon Harris. I am a Lockheed Martin aeronautical design engineer, and I'm here to present to you guys a little bit about myself. So first, wanted to thank you guys for taking the opportunity to have you as a guest speaker. First of all, going to University of Central Florida for X amount of years, it was a phenomenal experience, especially because of everything that I've learned from being a part of AIAA UCF. From the previous how many minutes that we saw the presentation, I see AIAA UCF hasn't really changed much, which is a very good thing because a wise man once told me, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So definitely really excited to kind of look from the other perspective as a professional now and actually have the opportunity to present to you guys a little bit about myself and tell you guys my story. And really quickly before I get started, just want to let you guys know I understand that it's very difficult times right now. I know AWCF is very excited once things open back up to really give you guys so much great experience and memories in the future. So definitely for people who aren't able to have the opportunity to get involved with some of these design projects now, be patient. Once things open back up, I promise you guys will not regret it. Alrighty, so quickly moving, quickly getting started. A little bit about myself. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, where I was only living there for about a year or two, and eventually my family moved to Miami in South Florida, and where I was raised in Miami and Lakeland in between my childhood and my adolescence. I am a first generation college student. Both of my parents are immigrants from the Caribbean who came out here to the United States for more opportunities for their children, and it definitely has turned tables because they've done a phenomenal job with raising two beautiful young men who are able to definitely make a name for themselves. My mom, she's a real estate agent right now, currently, and my father, he's an electrician for FP&L in Southern Florida, as well as a worker for American Airlines. And the reason why I mentioned where my dad works, especially with American Airlines, is because it's because of his work with American that my brother and I, growing up, we were constantly just around airplanes, whether we were in the aircraft itself, flying, going to visit family and friends, or whether we were just kind of like hanging around when dad's at work, we're just kind of looking around, seeing airplanes fly and stuff like that. So it really wasn't difficult for us to really um, get that passion for aerospace. And it wasn't just for me, as you guys can see in this next bullet. I also have an older brother who is about 2 years older than me, who also works at Lockheed Martin, very similar to me, who was also a part of AIAA when he went to University of Central Florida 2 years prior. So it is really funny to kind of see like that stagger in generations and kind of see like you guys are in the future is really, really bright. And as you guys can see really quickly, in these pictures on the left, um, here's a picture of me as a little baby with my older brother, feeding me, and here's a picture of my family on the top left, Christmas last year. So a little bit about myself, education. I went to Lake Gibson Senior High School. I'm not sure if any of you guys are familiar with the Polk County area of Florida. Well, that's where I'm from. And then after I graduated high school was super fun. I wasn't the smartest guy, but I did know that eventually I wanted to do everything I could to get myself to go to college because I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I said I want to be an engineer at one point. So one of the best schools that was available at the time was University of Central Florida. I applied, I got in, and I started. So I attended University of Central Florida UCF for about from 2014 to 2019. Like I mentioned, I wasn't part of the smart bunch. It took me 4.5, 5 years, which looking back, I am 100% glad it took me longer than 4 years because that last year, you're just telling yourself, wow, like I'm not supposed to be here right now. I should be working, but I could spend this extra year or extra semester, however long, to really just take it in and really just enjoy the college experience. And now currently, I love UCF so much, go Knights, that I'm currently getting my master's in engineering management. And I started in the spring semester in January, but who knows when I'll graduate. Getting your master's degree while working full time with life going on, it's definitely very difficult to really kind of time everything with when you're going to graduate. So I'm kind of just enjoying things as things come up. So, couple cool hobbies I like to do. I mean, I definitely have a lot more hobbies than are shown here, but just cool things about myself. I love hanging out with friends. I value friendship at the utmost importance of my life. Friends really do bring the best out of you. Um, I love painting. I'm not good at painting, but I do like to do it. It's very therapeutic. It's kind of fun. I love traveling. Of course, with COVID, you definitely want to limit travel as much as possible, but a lot of my friends, we've been a lot more creative with some of our travels, with a lot of things closed. Fortunately, Mother Nature, she's always open. And so some of the travels that we do, we go to various different national parks and kind of explore the world around us. If you look at the top left, for example, this is a picture I took. Look, AIAA represent. We actually went to Zion National Park about 2 weekends ago, and it was a phenomenal trip. If you guys have never been, I highly recommend you guys take the opportunity to go out there. Um, I love watching, playing sports. I, being from Florida, I'm a huge Miami Heat fan, huge Miami Dolphins fan, you name it, etc. But while I'm out here in Southern California and LA County, I am a Lakers fan. I love LeBron, so I'm definitely excited for that. So, um, and then of course, I love memes. All the funniest memes, please send them my way. I love them. They get me through the day when work gets tough. You just need some humor, and of course all things tech. I love all things tech. I love Elon Musk. I love all the latest and greatest Apple products and gadgets and whatnot. You name it, I love it. So that's just a little bit about me, and those are my hobbies. So where it gets real fun is my AIAA UCF involvement, right? I know some of you guys may be sophomores, juniors, seniors, just getting involved with AIAA because you guys starting to realize that like getting involved with clubs is super important. But for those of you who are freshmen, I was in your shoes my freshman year. My freshman year, my brother was already here. He told me, he's like, yo, Ray, you need to join this project. They did really cool stuff. And I was like, okay, why not? And so I joined it. And then my freshman year, I had the opportunity to get involved with a couple projects. I did aviation design and then did a little bit of the hovercraft project, which those were really, really fun. And it was really, really good opportunity for me to kind of get some hands-on experience because of when I started in college, I was so far behind that it was hard for me to really do anything engineering related. And so AIAA was really a perfect opportunity to kind of bridge that gap and remind you, hey, you're not just in college to take your ENC 1101 or whatever class they have your freshman year. You're here to make airplanes, you're here to make rockets, you're here to make hovercrafts. And then the following year, I loved the project so much that I actually became an assistant. And then while I was an assistant to the aviation design project, I also did rockets. My rocket wasn't that good, but it was fun. The guys I met on my rockets team were actually still pretty good pals today. We're actually coworkers, actually. And I also did the RC Flight Academy, which I see that you guys are still doing that to this day. And then junior year, I became the aviation design lead, which was really awesome because I got to finally use some of the knowledge from my experiences as an assistant, as well as my experience as a participant, to really learn like, okay, how do you teach this in a way that someone who doesn't have any technical knowledge whatsoever can really absorb and learn all things about aircraft and learn how to successfully make an RC aircraft by the end of the school year. So that was really fun. And that year was the last year that I really was friends with there's a certain generation of people with my brother and his friends who where I went to college with from 2014, 2017. And once they kind of dropped off and left, we started noticing that there was going to be a huge void in, AIAA leadership. And a lot of them told me like, yo, Ray, you've been involved in this for a certain time now. Like, we really think you would be a good president. So I took on the opportunity to tell myself like, hey, like if being a leader of this organization means that I'm a representative to the organization throughout the entire UCF community, I think that would have been a perfect fit just because of how passionate I was towards the AIAA UCF community. And of course, so I became the president for that year, which was really, really fun. Probably one of my favorite years ever being a part of AIAA UCF. Just the friends you meet, the experience and all that was super great. It was actually kind of funny when I decided to run. I was helping one of the groups with the aviation design project. And if you look in the top left corner, the guy in the blue shirt, Arthur, and then to his right, Brandon, we were kind of in one of the labs in school. And then I was telling, I was like, yo, guys, like, what if we just decide to run for officers for AIAA? And they kind of looked at me and they're like, yo, let's do it. And so us being like three amigos, three best friends, we're like, you know what, let's see what happens. And we all ran. We all had people compete against us, and we were fortunate that we were able to win. And then we had a lot of fun that year. It was great. AIAA went for the first time, became like I think we had over 400 members. And probably my favorite memories is that because a part of our e-board we're also best friends, and obviously we're in college. It was really funny that we were able to not only have meetings, out on campus, but sometimes we'll also go to Lazy Moon, get some pictures, have some pizza, hang out, and have some other e-board meetings and be productive. And then even funnier, sometimes at nights. At the time, Arthur was a bartender at library. We'll literally just go to the night library with him at night before it really opened to everybody, and just sit down and kind of get some notepad and paper and be like, all right, guys, what are we gonna do this week? What are some cool ideas that we have? So it was a great experience with not just the e-board, but the entire officer community. If you look as well, like in the middle of the picture, you see Michaela right there, former AIAA UCF president. I know she's done a phenomenal job last year. You really kind of see that transition in terms of like um, the amazing leaders of this organization, and kind of how just a trickle down effect. Some of you members right now may become officers the following year, who may also become executive board members the following year, and then eventually doing some amazing stuff after you graduate. So another cool thing is that your involvement with AIAA does not stop at UCF level. Ironically, I probably feel, if not equal, maybe the only replacement is that in the past AIAA, I kind of treated it as more like a full-time job, 40 hours a week, lots of stress, lots of headache. Now obviously work is a little bit more important with that, and also I also have a lot of fun at work, but I still do put a decent amount of time into just staying involved with AIAA. One of the things that we have at Lockheed Martin is that we have a LM AIAA community of interest, which I was actually a part of the team that started it, because I love the interaction that I had with AIAA officers and members so much in college that when you got to the professional environment, it really wasn't the same, because as the same as at college. And a lot of us here, we're all former leaders, we're all former members of AIAA in college. We're like, man, like we wish it could be like it was in college. And fortunately, because of the nature of our job, they're like, hey, like, see something, say something, do something. If we present a problem, you find a solution. And so we took that upon ourselves, and we now made an entire community of interest, which not only spreads across Lockheed Martin in California, but it's also all throughout LM Aeronautics in Texas, Georgia, you name it. So it's really fun to get involved with that. And there's also another thing, RECAP. It stands for Revitalizing Early Career AIAA Participation. It's a very long acronym. You don't have to worry about it, but pretty much it is kind of like what they have. I had the diversity scholar program that they have for undergrad, but pretty much if you're early level 1 or level 2 in your early career and you would like to attend these national conference, paid for, everything, hotels paid for, registration paid for, you're literally getting paid to actually go to these conference and everything. And they give you a nice little voucher for meals and whatever you want to do with that money each night. It's a really fun experience that Lockheed does, just because like they understand that the experience that you get with AIAA is not just the technical stuff, but it's everything. It's all the above. Like, interaction that you have with people, just getting food with them, getting drinks, or just any sort of conversation that you have with them. And then another thing that I'm involved with right now is something that's actually going to be presented at the AIAA SciTech conference come January, is something called AIAA Idea Challenge. So there's Lockheed Martin, Ball Aerospace, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, and then I also believe NASA is a competition where these 5 companies get into groups of 5 different teams, and we take this topic of this year's topic is diversity and design cycle to go faster, and we kind of sit amongst ourselves and brainstorm like, what does this mean, and we kind of create some sort of presentation of expressing what a problem is going on our environment, um, who's involved in this problem, how can we fix it, and then we kind of present our case to an audience with what we can do. And if you guys ever look up the idea challenge from the past, there's a lot of really cool things involved with that. It's very difficult to really explain what it is in the span of a couple minutes, but if you guys ever get a chance to do some research on the AIAA Idea Challenge each year, is a phenomenal thing that you can definitely learn some things from. And then of course some other AIAA ventures I like to do. I am still pretty active in the national level. On the occasion, if you ever see the AIAA national social media, sometimes I help out with them with doing I think we do like trivia sometimes and just some other various different things. And overall, like the AIAA community is phenomenal. I would say it is the reason that me and so many of my friends, we are where we are right now. Like um, you don't get your job with some of these companies by applying online, just sitting down and waiting. You apply to a rec, you go to these conference, you talk to some of these managers, and they're like, you know what, I like you. I see AIAA UCF, I see all these different projects. Like, wow, like a lot of these other universities don't have this, especially seeing you do this as a sophomore and freshman. Like most people don't do this to their senior year. So seeing you be able to do that early on, they really love that. And they're like, wow, let's give you a job right now. Alrighty, so getting into some more fun stuff is overall work experience. So you guys may or may not be familiar with the Lockheed Martin College Work Experience Program. Um, if if you guys are, then you know that you can see that I was a former mechanical design engineer, CWEP from Lockheed. I actually got my position because of AIAA. When my old former boss called me, he thought that aviation design was, he thought it was a job. He thought that I made RC aircraft for a company because based off what the missions were and stuff like that. And he was like, wait, you guys are just doing this as like a college experience? Like this isn't a capstone or anything? We're like, and I was like, no, this is what we do. I mean, and it's not just me. There's like over 50 of us doing the same thing. He's like, wow, this is awesome. And then because of the experience with doing that and, just my simple passion of aircraft, he was like, hey, I want you working for Lockheed. So got the position, and then I was able to do that. And then, of course, after getting my full-time offer at the AIAA, at the time Aviation Forum, I was able to work full-time now as an aeronautical design engineer for Skunkworks. So a little bit about Skunkworks. You guys may or may not have heard of it. Skunkworks is pretty much Lockheed Martin's, like it's Lockheed Martin's overall, it's their favorite child. It's this is the best analogy I can really explain Skunkworks is that imagine you have AIAA UCF with all the various design projects and kind of just trial and error, just a whole bunch of creative minds throwing something together. And just imagine that just more scaled up and you have way more money. It is a phenomenal experience. I mean, any sort of classified, unclassified, really cool airplanes out there that you've ever heard of might have been a part of Lockheed Martin Skunkworks. You know the history behind the U-2 from the 50s and the 60s. Obviously, the fastest aircraft to ever fly, the SR-71, and then just some other aircraft. The stealth aircraft F-117. These were all being made and developed by Lockheed Martin Skunkworks. Even the F-35 and F-22, those were all originally Skunkworks projects. And probably the funniest part that a lot of people may not know, who know a little bit about it, but these are all old news. These are all things that were developed in like the 60s. F-22, I think, was developed in the 70s. F-117, I think, was a little bit of 70s and 80s. And you look at some of these till this day, and it still looks like, wow, like this looks futuristic. So you can only imagine some of the cool things that Skunkworks is doing right now, and that's going to be flying in 20, 30 years. And it's great, but not so great that probably the thing that I don't like about my job is that there's so many cool things that we do we just really can't talk about. And it's kind of one of those where like, oh, you have to be there to really get that full experience of what Skunkworks has to offer. But overall, like very different to any other company. One of the things I notice about a lot of engineering companies is that um, as soon as you start working, you tend to lose your creativity, and that's like any other job. You are as creative as ever in college, which is why a lot of companies go to these colleges to do all these ideas and projects. But Skunkworks is one of the very few places where you can really just be as creative as possible and literally make something that ever even been thought of before. To really quickly give you guys a little bit more of an overview about what Skunkworks is, I actually have a link that I sent Want to play a quick little minute-long video for you guys.
Yep, let me pull up the video. Oh, we got an advertisement. 1 second. Let me just refresh it until we don't get one. There we go. I muted our audio real quick.
Nice,
So
nice.
they'll only hear the video. You're doing great so far.
Yeah, you're doing good.
Thank you, thank you.
Hell yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, if you want to drink some water real quick. There are some questions piling up in the chat, and then I'm just saving them till we get to.
Oh, definitely. Definitely have plenty of time for questions.
Yeah, I can't see any of the questions, so you're gonna have to send them to me.
All right,
I don't know why the chat won't load.
I'll do it. We're back. You're live.
Alrighty. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I remember the first time I watched that video, it was honestly mind-blowing just to really take a look at it. And I'm like, wow, like this is literally what people do. And to have the opportunity to be able to work on something like that is amazing. So just a quickly letting you guys know about the geographic location of where Skunkworks or Lockheed Martin AEP is located. It is headquartered in Palmdale, California. If you've heard of it, then you know everything I'm about to tell you. It is located in a desert, very similar to actually where the rocket competition will be in the Mojave. It's probably about 30 minutes south of where that competition is going to take place. They like to do a lot of stuff out there because there's really nothing else out there but just dirt. It is 60 minutes north of LA. LA is the biggest city close to it, and 30 minutes northeast of Santa Clarita. And why is that important? The reason it's important is because although there are a lot of people who work in Palmdale, who live and work in Palmdale, of course, with LA only being an hour away, it is very popular and common that a lot of people actually live in the city of Santa Clarita, and then they just drive here 30 minutes to work, and then on the weekends they could kind of just go and do whatever and have fun with it. They go to Santa Monica, Malibu, you name it, and they really just get to still enjoy the city of Los Angeles, which for those of you guys who have never been to LA, as someone who loves Orlando, it really pretty much feels like a big sister to Orlando, except there's actually mountains now, and then the water is a little bit colder. And of course, outside of Palmdale, California, Skunkworks also has additional locations in Marietta, Georgia, which Marietta is closest to Atlanta. It's about 30 minutes north of Atlanta, and then Fort Worth, Texas, which is about 35 to 40 minutes from Dallas, Texas. So, of course, like I mentioned, a lot of the programs that Skunkworks does, probably 95% of its work is completely 100% classified, to the extent that there are some programs that I have best friends and buddies who are working on that I have no idea, and there's stuff that I'm working on that they have no idea. But it's really nice to know to have some unclassified work to, you know, really kind of show the audience and show everyone around in the world like, hey, these are still some of the cool things that we are doing at AEP. Some of you guys may be familiar with this supersonic jet. This is the NASA X-59. So something cool with this NASA X-59 is pretty much a couple years ago, NASA said, hey, it takes 5 hours to fly from Orlando to LA, and it took 5 hours to fly from Orlando to LA in 1960. That's a problem. We're not innovating aircrafts enough to where planes are able to fly faster. We understand that back in the day, there was the Concorde that was an amazing aircraft that was able to fly at what, Mach 1.8 or even faster, that they use very heavily flying from North America to Europe. But the problem is with any supersonic jet, you guys probably or may not know, is that with the sonic boom, it gets very loud. And A lot of times the noise pollution is very dangerous, and it really limited the market for the Concorde, which was part of the reason why it just got retired very early, is because not only because of some of the small issues that it had in the aircraft itself, but also the market just wasn't there. A lot of people in the United States, they really wish they had a supersonic jet to really fly from, your LA to New York, or your LA to Miami, or your Miami to New York, vice versa. A lot of these long haul flights that really could be condensed in terms of time. So NASA did some research and said, hey, we think we can make an airplane that can really silence the sonic boom. And really, pretty much the design of it actually makes the sonic boom just quieter. And they were like, okay, we need to find a contractor or a company that can help us out with that. And then they looked no further than ADP. So they reached out to us a couple of years back and they said, hey guys, can you guys help us make this? And Lockheed took on a challenge and we're like, okay, let's do it. So the X-59 Quest, there's a lot of different names. Some people call it low boom, some people call it X-59, some people call it, like I mentioned, Quest. It is a supersonic jet demonstrator that is going to pretty much use to experiment and test the loudness of a sonic boom. So some of the various things they're going to do with this aircraft is once it begins flight testing and once it's being built, it will literally fly over condensed populations, over citizens, maybe about 60,000 feet up in the sky. And what they're going to do is gather data and see if there's anybody calling 911 for noise complaints or complaining on social media or whatever. And if they hear no complaints, it's a mission success. Proves that they can fly at supersonic capabilities while still being able to get rid of the negative of supersonic aircraft, which is the huge sonic boom. And this is a really cool aircraft, just not only because of the technologies that it can bring in terms of for future aircraft, but also for Lockheed Martin to take the opportunity to really revolutionize the way that we build aircrafts. So as part of the structures team for efforts similar to this, some of the things that we're actually doing is we're literally changing the ways that we kind of build aircrafts in the first place. For those of you guys who have done and or built any sort of RC aircraft or rocket, you guys may know that the second time that you make something is always way different than the first time, right? Because you start learning some of the design aspects that worked and some of them that didn't work, and you try to find a way to, okay, how do I make something similar but in the quickest, cheapest, most efficient way possible? And so some of the cool things that we're doing here at AD probably the end of 2021 or early 2022. So because this is a NASA aircraft, it is unclassified. You guys are more than welcome to do some research and actually figure out when it gets close. If you guys ever get a chance to see it, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of equipment. And so, of course, I mentioned what the goal is. Once they gather this data, if things work out, the future of commercial supersonic aircrafts might be very bright. We may start to see future airliners start flying from, here to from Orlando to LA, and maybe 2 or even 3 hours instead of your typical 5-6 hours. So, of course, a lot of what I've talked about throughout the presentation was a lot of my years in college and how AIAA has been phenomenal for me, and now I'm working at personally for me my dream job. And as much as it's great right now, I do understand that this was by no means easy. There were so many challenges, so many obstacles that I had to go through. A lot of these things that I understand that with COVID right now, for you guys are also going through a lot of challenges and obstacles. And I know probably one of the hardest things is doing class virtually and getting the motivation to really get through these classes. And so something I wanted to really break down is some of the challenges that I went through to kind of let you guys understand and realize that like my college life was nowhere near perfect. So one of the things my freshman year, I didn't have many friends in high school. My school, they're very sports oriented. Although I did play a lot of sports in high school as well. There's not a lot of people who actually went to college. I think in my high school graduating class of 400, only 20 went to a university. And most of them went to Florida State, USF, and then there was me. I think I was the only person that went to UCF for my year. So starting out my freshman year, it was hard to really kind of, make friends for me. And I had roommate problems, and it was just a mess. And overall, just adjusting to college. I was already starting behind. I didn't have the privilege to take math serious in high school. So when I started college, I literally took college algebra. And not only I took college algebra, but I also was really like, I looked at it and I'm like, wow, like kind of got a reality check. Like, is this really for me? Like, do I really have what it takes to be an engineer? But fortunately, to really kind of offset that was that I was involved with AIAA UCF very early, and it kind of made me realize like, hey, there's more to college than just your academics. And because of my involvement with that, it kind of kept me going and know like, hey, if I want to still continue to do AIAA UCF stuff and continue to make all these cool things, that means I need to do well in school so I don't flunk out. And so that was really nice to really know and really understand myself. And so I kind of got over that hump. And then of course, sophomore year, I mean, this is just one of those things. Like once I've been in college for a while, I personally did not have a car my sophomore year, and with no car and of course lack of funds, and back in high school I did work a lot. I worked at McDonald's, I worked at Hollister, I worked at Air Policy, you name it. I did everything in high school. But in college I told myself like I don't want to work any part-time jobs because I just really want to focus on, doing everything I can to be, an engineer in the future. And I told myself I set certain goals. I said, unless I'm doing an internship, I don't want to work at all, or some sort of part-time job, especially because the opportunity that you have in Orlando. There's so many opportunities, whether it be in defense or, in the tech world or Space Coast right there. I told myself that I want to be one of those people that can, work on one of those positions. And so that was, of course, a challenge for me. I told myself I'm not going to work, then of course you have no money. Then junior year definitely the core classes really hit me. I remember I took statics. The first homework assignment, I was opening it in like McGraw Hill or something. I look at the first question. I'm like, oh, I got this. I know exactly how I'm gonna do this, and I got a headache because I kept trying to answer the question. I kept getting it wrong. I was like, man, this is gonna be tough. And but then one of my friends like, yo, Ray, you can't do it by yourself. You gotta get checked, man. I was like, all right, you know what? Let me see what check is all about. And ever since, it was so much easier because that kind of taught me that trying to understand engineering is very difficult, but if you can at least understand the process for how you get from point A to point B, that's all that matters. You'll eventually understand the concept later, but if you can really just understand how do you get from point A to B, definitely prioritize on that first. And so that was pretty much junior year. And then, of course, senior, as part one, because like I mentioned, it took me 5 years. Um, Probably one of the hardest things is this was actually the first full school year that I was actually 21. So it was very difficult to manage working part time as a CWEP, my academics with school, trying to party because at the end of the day it was still college, and then overall life balance, your physical health, trying to make sure you're still in shape, your mental health. That's very very important, especially now, making sure you're saying no anxiety attacks, none of that, all that stuff. It's very important that you really make sure you take care of that. And while trying to do all that stuff, I was also running an organization, and it's kind of one of those things that when you're a leader, whether it be in this organization or any organization, or just when you're a leader for anything, people are constantly looking at you, and how they look at you, your image is really important because a lot of times it kind of reflects on them. So one of the hardest challenges is that I have to go through all this while still trying to have that positive outlook for everybody else. Because if I don't have a positive mindset, how does that reflect on the rest of the organization? So that was one huge challenge. But of course, like I said, it was very fun. And then senior year part two, this is actually one funny, but if you refer to the image to the right, you guys have probably been looking at it for a while now. This is a perfect analogy of what not only just my senior year was like, but it's just college in general. Like you start realizing that you've been doing it for so long that a lot of these really difficult challenges just day-to-day life at this point. And so it doesn't feel as bad as it did the first time you got exposed to it. I guess just you just naturally just got used to it. And so obviously everything's not fine, but you do so, I mean, you've got so far, like, all right, well, I just gotta, walk through fire and then you'll graduate and then everything will be all right. So it is it's a really cool meme that I like to really refer to anytime that things really get tough. So, and I always tell myself, if anybody's gonna do it, I gotta do it. So it has been it was a definitely interesting 5 years at UCF, but it was definitely great. And I know some people say that because for freshmen and sophomores or who are really missing a lot of the college experience right now, so you probably hear people say, "Oh, college is the best years of your life." I thought that while I was in college, but I promise you, once you graduate, get you a decent job, your life gets so much better. It's great. The light at the end of the tunnel is almost near. And then of course that kind of pours onto just overall some advice that I have for you guys. This is my last slide before questions. Can take some of those, but um, you only go as far as your network. Definitely right now, I know this is definitely difficult for a lot of people who see themselves as introverts. Definitely try to go out of your way. If you can't meet a regular person or a random person, it's difficult for you. At least find that one person that you trust and network with them and help them network with you. And because your network is really what's going to get you your positions. One of my best friends, Arthur, at the time when he graduated, he had no internship experience, no nothing. He had graduated from UCF, bartender at library, and I convinced him to buy a ticket one way to come with me to Atlanta for his conference. And we kind of found a way for him to attend the conference. And then from there, I was able to introduce him to some folks at Lockheed. And he worked really hard. He told me, like, hey, like, I'm not leaving here until I get an offer. Obviously, not literally saying that, but when he showed that ambition and showed that passion, he was able to eventually land the job as a flight test engineer out here in California. So now he's flight testing F-35s, hovering, all other fun stuff. And with no internship experience. So for you seniors right now who haven't had any internship experience yet, trust me, don't even worry about that. As long as you show you have passion in aerospace and you're very involved with AIAA UCF, you guys should be all right. Next thing is, like I mentioned, your passion will carry you farther than your intelligence. When I was a freshman, like I mentioned, took college algebra, and there were some colleagues who were taking calculus too. And I was like, man, they're gonna graduate way before me. And I kind of what I did too much was try to compare myself to them, but I try to kind of focus on my own personal path. And then a couple semesters go by, I'm starting into my engineering classes. I'm looking at them, and they're like, "Oh, Ray, you're still doing engineering? I switched to business." In my mind, I'm like, "What happened? Like, you guys are so smart." But you realize that when you're only doing it for the money, or you're doing it because, oh, I'm bored. Like, when it gets tough, you're just gonna give up. But when you have that ambition, when you have that passion, and you tell yourself, I want to be an engineer, like, it doesn't matter what they throw at you, you're going to get through it. And I like to tell myself, it's like kind of like a tether. You're holding onto a rope, and at the end of the tunnel of that rope is your goal, and it's constantly pulling you. And it's always constantly going to be obstructions in the way trying to, push you off. But as long as you hold on to that rope, doesn't matter how long it takes you, you're going to get there, and it's going to be great. And then next bullet, when you're in a struggle, don't be afraid to reach out for help. I do this all the time with any sort of situation. When I was part of the leadership team with AIAA, if I was struggling with doing something, I was reaching out. I had 2 or 3 people. I was like, hey, I need your help. Can you help me with this? Same thing with school. Um, I was struggling in one class. I would call one of my boys like, yo, can you help me with this, etc. But at the same time, you don't want to be an opportunist. You don't want to be a person that takes advantage of other people. Only help people if you know that in the future you'll be able to either help them with, or you can help them in just a different sector. And of course, like I mentioned right now, you're classmates, your teammates, not enemies. There are guys who I had. His name is Kevin Ha. One of his name is Jake Lambert. We had physics 1 together. It was like PHY 2048 or something like that. We literally had physics 1 together. It's like one of our first classes we had together, and now all 3 of us work out here in California. Because once you kind of associate yourself as teammates early on, you guys start doing everything together, and like you realize, like, man, I want to continue working with them. And so I knew once I got my offer, I pretty much told all the managers, like, hey, I'm letting you know there's a UCF party out there, and we're coming. And so before I started, there was nobody under the age of 25 that I knew working out here, and as of right now, we have at least 10 in Palmdale. Fort Worth has like 10 to 15, and of course Orlando has a lot. But in terms of Lockheed Aeronautics, UCF is definitely getting a lot heavier presence just because of all the networks and all the the interaction that you had with people throughout in classes or throughout AIAA. And of course, stay involved. The AIAA SciTech conference is going to be the first week of January, and because it's virtual, definitely take advantage of that. You can literally just log into Zoom, AIAA website, or whatever, and then you can join some of these rooms and really start to network yourself and really get some of these opportunities and positions. Because like I mentioned before, at least for Lockheed, very few of their recs are actually kind of like you apply online and then they call you. It's a lot of them is kind of like you apply online, excuse me, then you go to these conferences, and then that's when they really get the chance to really meet you as a person. They interview you, and then they offer you those offers at the conference. And the same thing goes for internships. So, and like I said, I am by no means, I am not selfish at all. So for people who are interested in working for Lockheed Martin Aeronautics, whether it be for a full-time job or for an internship, um, what I ask for you to do is to please go on Lockheed Martin Jobs, apply for those recs, and email me your resume, cover letter, and rec numbers. And although the cover letter isn't required for these recs, the cover letter is something that I personally would like to use. That way, that I can really know a lot of things about you, so I can vouch for you. If the manager is like, "Hey, Ray, who is this kid?" So at the end of the day, I mean, as long as you went to UCF, we're all family here. Especially if you have AIAA. Oh yeah, we go way back, even if I've never met you in person. And so it's kind of one of those things that we help each other out. And here's my contact information right there. I can also try to send this to the leadership team. That way they can also take that and kind of dish it out to you guys. I don't mind having my emails being blown up. Trust me, it happens. I know managers who have 500 plus emails every single day. So it's not a big deal at all. Definitely, if you email me, that means you're really passionate and you're really serious about getting opportunity to work for Lockheed in the future. So I definitely want to thank you guys for that if you guys ever get a chance to reach out. And other than that, that is all I have for uh, presentation. So I want to open it up for questions.
Awesome. I want to start by saying thank you so much, Ray. Oh my God. It was incredible to hear your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions here from a couple of different sources. The first one comes from our Twitch chat, and they asked, is Skunkworks essentially the field that's more, or a field that's more R&D focused?
So Skunkworks is 100% R&D. There is, unlike some programs with companies where you have a plane that you're going to make 500 of these in the future, or you have a plane that's been the same plane from 1980 as it is today. You just kind of work on making it better. Skunkworks is 100% R&D. Like, to the extent that I actually don't even hear the word R&D at Skunkworks, because that is just who we are. Every single plane that we make at ADP, we make one, maybe two if we get money, but for the most part, we literally make one. And we're like, all right, guys, we're done. What's the next aircraft we're making? Literally, you would go sometimes at the exact same time. Some people literally would work on something that's flying that's maybe 5 feet, and at the same time working on something that's 80 feet long, and you just kind of work on both of them at the same time in a given week, and then they're both done, and then you move on to the next project. And so for the most part, Skunkworks is 100% R&D.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course.
All right. This next question comes from Spencer, and he asks, are there any classes or any other content from school that you thought were super beneficial to you getting your career?
So in terms of classes and in terms of what I do today, the only classes that, well, there's a lot of them they're all very important. I definitely want to say one of your advisors, Dr. Raghavan, your aerostructures class, your junior year, I would say is very important in terms of what I do as a designer. That and your structures and properties of aerospace materials, and then they call it as a mechanics of materials or solid mechanics. As a designer, those are really the main classes that helped out. Outside of that, AIAA has helped me more than anything else. These aviation design, rocket classes, and understanding the overall design life cycle of a project was really what taught you, because you kind of know like what you're working on, you know what's the next step afterwards. And you'll be surprised, some people they're working and then they have no idea what's next, but you see the people with experience with, even if it's a small RC level, having that experience of seeing an entire design life cycle really makes it easier for the company because they don't have to teach you as much.
Awesome. All right. This one is also from the Twitch chat. What is your favorite airplane?
Ooh, my favorite airplane. This is tough. This is tough. Ironically, so so I have a 1A and 1B. My favorite airplane is not the SR-71. It's actually called the A-12. So it's the same thing pretty much, but the SR-71 is a version that was used by the Air Force, but the A-12 was really the one that was used by, at the time, the CIA. The CIA said, hey, we need to go spy on some people, but we need something that goes really high, and if they shoot stuff at us, we need something to go really fast. And so the A-12 was one of those things that it's really pretty much the Blackbird, and super fast, super, I mean, not quiet, but, and it was an amazing plane. When you read about it, there's actually a book, a Skunkworks book made by Ben Rich. If you ever get a chance to read it, we're really talking about the SR-71 is because somebody, I think, walked into a meeting and they found out and they got super pissed because they're like, why are you making planes for CIA and not for us, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, okay, we'll give you guys a 1-2 pretty much. So SR-71 is my, A-12 is my favorite. And then on the other side, however, I really do love the Boeing 777. Boeing 777, that's like, it's a phenomenal plane. Like the fact that something that's so massive and that actually just lifts off the ground, just flies. Like if you've ever been on one, if you've ever been on a long haul international flight, you realize that really this plane is really wider than some of our bedrooms, some of our living rooms. And like you look to the side and you're like, wow, like it's like how many X feet wide, and to be able to see something so massive just fly in the sky is truly amazing. And it's also really, really good looking.
Awesome. All right. This question comes from Christian. Do you have any advice for narrowing down what field of aerospace someone should go into?
Ooh. So one of the hardest challenges that a lot of aerospace people have, unless you had that passion early on, is trying to figure out airplanes or rockets, right? The best thing I can say is, ironically, you don't have to narrow it down. I have a lot of coworkers who they started off doing aerospace stuff, and then after 2 years, they're like, okay, I'm going to work on rockets now. And they just go ahead and just jump ship and do it. So I guess the biggest thing I can tell you is don't pressure yourself into only liking one. You don't have to. Definitely, you may have to choose if you apply for 2 different companies that one makes rockets, one makes airplanes, and they both give you offers, and that'll be a very good problem to have. But for the most part, I would not narrow it down at all. If you love rockets, if you love aircraft and airplanes, definitely continue to be passionate about both of those, and kind of let your career more so decide, because a lot of your experience with them right now in college may be different from when you do it, in the future. Of course, rocket companies are SpaceX, Blue Origin, ULA. Those are phenomenal rocket companies. And then for aircraft, you're Boeing, Lockheed, Northrop. Those are phenomenal, airplane companies. And some of them do both. Some of them do everything. And ironically, a lot of these companies who do both, they actually give you that opportunity to really explore all of those in the future. Because I know Lockheed, for example, we have something called a leadership development program, which Boeing also has these leadership development programs where you get to really touch so many different things. Like I think Boeing one year you can work on the 777 one year, and you do a rotation where you get to go to the Space Coast and work on the CST 1000, if that's what it's called, the capsule that they're using, and you really get to touch both of them. So my only advice for you is just keep your options open. Enjoy both right now.
Awesome. All right. Next question. What is the best advice that you've ever been given?
Ooh, the best advice I've ever been given. So the best advice I've ever been given is, I would say the first thing that comes to my mind, I was 4 years old, 5 years old. When I was a kid, I guess I grew up with my brother. He used to be very good at drawing, and then he used to always draw little pictures for me. At the time, we used to watch Dragon Ball Z. I don't know if you guys know about that right now. And he used to draw for me, but then one day he just stopped drawing for me. He's like, Ray, I'm not doing this for you anymore. And I remember I cried, and I ran to the living room, I was crying my mom, and she didn't know what to do. And then my dad called me. He asked me why am I crying, and I told him like, oh, he wanted to do something for me. And then he told me that pretty much told me that sometimes when it didn't sound exactly like this. Obviously, I was 4 years old, but he said sometimes you really can't have people do things for you. Sometimes if you can't have someone do something for you, you just got to do it yourself. And the way that I kind of read that was that don't let anybody kind of set the standard or kind of set your path for what you can do. You should be the only person that sets your path. And a lot of those things also occurs when you get to the professional world. You get to the professional world, you're going to have experience with managers who think that, hey, I it took me 30 years to become a manager, become a leader. So I'm going to I want you to do everything you can to also do this in 30 years. But no, no, no. Like a lot of times you have to set your own path for that. If just because this person thinks that this is the correct way, doesn't mean that that is actually the correct way for you. You kind of have to set that up, do that by yourself. And by learning that, it was really cool because although I do take a lot of advice from people, I take their advice to really kind of just get more input, but not necessarily control my decision on what I do. Because at the end of the day, when you make decisions for yourself, you'll never have any regrets because you know you're doing everything for yourself. So set your own path is my best advice I always have for you.
That's incredible advice. Honestly, something to live by.
Of course.
All right. And then backpacking off of that, is there any literature that you'd recommend that has helped you either in aerospace or just in your life in general?
Ooh, so there is a book called I think it's called Who Took My Cheese or Who Stole My Cheese. It's a very short book. It's about 90 pages. I think it's Who Stole My Cheese. And it's a book that really teaches you everything about change, about how the only thing that is inevitable is change. And the story is so good because of, I remember I read this book. My mom and dad actually had this book years ago. I found it in their bookshelf when I was visiting back home. And I read through the book and I realized like, wow, this is really cool. To the extent that with all the problems going on with COVID, and this is when at the time Lockheed ADP was really trying to transition to figure out, hey, how are we going to attack this? The first thing I did is that I told myself, I'm going to give this book to our vice president. And I literally emailed our vice president, who, if you guys know Kelly Johnson for Skunkworks, our new VP, his name is Jeff Babione. He's our current like chief skunk pretty much. And because of my decent relationship with him, I felt like I was like, you know what? I don't care who you are. I treat everybody the same. I think it's a good book you should read. And I gave it to him. And after he got the book, he told me he loved it. He actually said, I'm going to go buy it and then make all my family read it. And then, but he actually used some of the words that he used in that. And then every couple of weeks or so, he kind of has like a memo that he sends out to the entire team just to give us some piece of encouragement. And for him to see some of those words from the book that he learned from it, and to really learn that, hey, like, as long we can't, I mean, we know change is going to come. We can do two things. We could resist it and struggle, or we can embrace the change. Or the best thing we could do is um, be like design your life in a way that you move with the change. And so by him always talking about that, he also mentioned, of course, with ADP, we already do a lot of things like that, but it was just kind of a reminder like, hey, change is always going to happen. They're all like your life is never going to be the same tomorrow as it was yesterday. But you just got to always prepare yourself in a way that you can adjust to it very smoothly. And yeah, so the book is called Who Stole My Cheese, and it's a phenomenal book. For those of you guys who don't like reading, I'm not the biggest reader, but the book is very short. I think I read it in like 3 hours. It's phenomenal. It's also really funny,
Awesome. We'll be sure to share that around in the Discord.
of course.
All right. This one is from Christian again. And he asks, what has been your most memorable experience in both AIAA and while working at Lockheed Martin?
Ooh. So AIAA, the most memorable experience. Man, I would say, so when I did the aviation design project, I thought that it would be when my plane flew for the first time when it really like hit the air, but it wasn't that. My most memorable experience was probably when I became one of the leads for the project. And there was one year, because before 2016 or 2017, I think it's 2016, it was very common that 60 to 70% of planes at the competition day are going to crash, and that's it. Mission one, they go up and they go down, they crash. And obviously, it's failure is a part of a learning experience. Failure is an option, guys, or failure is an experience. And although that was great, I also wanted every single team to build a plane that is going to fly well. Because at the end of the day, if you build a plane, you build a rocket, you build a hovercraft, you want it to be in good shape and form and for you to take home and show to your parents. And it was really amazing that competition day happened, and you're just sitting back and having your pilots fly the planes, and every single plane passed mission one. And when every single plane passed mission one, I think at the time we had 13 planes. Me and our other leads were looking back like, whoa, like, of course, like we were so happy for them, because you saw every single person was happy. You saw no sad faces of people. We call it the walk of shame, where you go pick up your airplane that just crashed. No one did that after mission one. Everybody was just smiling and happy. Like, no one was jealous of other teams for flying successful planes. And we kind of looked at each other like, you know what, like, we did our job. So it was really nice for me to see people that I was able to help train and teach them, seeing their planes fly, especially the freshmen, because a lot of these freshmen, they had no experience with engineering at all. Their only engineering knowledge they had was whatever we threw in some PowerPoint slide. So it was a phenomenal experience at AIAA. And then with work, um, my probably, well, this is probably, it's not really anything that I did, but at ADP at Skunkworks is, when you start working, you work on a lot of unclassified efforts, and then waiting for your security clearance, and when you get briefed to a program. But then, like the movies, you go into this little briefing room when it's your time, and you sit down and you're like, hey, this is your project. And then I remember the first time that I saw one of these cool things that I was going to be working on, and I was literally speechless, and I was like, okay, like, this is why I moved from Florida to California. Like, this is why I was so passionate about aerospace. And it really, I was kind of like one of those where I'm like, I felt like a little kid in the park. Like, I was like, this is just, I was just speechless to see what I was going to have the opportunity to work on.
That's awesome. All right. Next one. Who has been your biggest inspiration in your life?
My biggest inspiration, although there's a lot. I have a lot of inspirations, but I would say right now, I would say it was probably my brother. I compare of a lot of things that I do throughout my life. I do compare to my brother. I always tell myself, okay, he's 2 years older than me. What was he doing 2 years ago? Every time, whether I'm 6 years old, whether I'm 10, I'm 11, whether I'm my age now, like working, I'm like, where was my brother 2 years ago? Was he doing this? Was he doing that? And then, of course, I mean, it's a lot of friendly competition, but at the same time, one thing I loved about my brother is that because he saw us more as a team instead of like as competing against each other, every step of the way, he always encouraged me to like do better than how he did. Graduate with a better GPA than he did, network and get more opportunities than he did earlier on. He was vice president when he was part of AIAA. He said, "No, Ray, go for president." Um, his position that he has at Lockheed, he's like, "Ray, I want you to do something cooler. I'm working on F-35, F-22 stuff. No, I want you to go work on the classified stuff." Like, he always pushed me to always do better. And then it's always cool because for us, I mean, we're first generation college students. We don't really have those parents that were engineers or did anything cool that we can really look to. Of course, they're very encouraging, but we really didn't have them to really tell us like how far do we have to go. And so he always paves the way for me. And every time he goes and does something, I kind of look at him and be like, okay, if he can do it, then I definitely can do it. So I always tell myself that I'll only go as far as my brother can go. And if he can do it, then I'll be falling right behind him. And the same thing goes for my mentees. I see him as my mentor. I have some mentees who are also former leaders of AIAA a couple of years ago. Now they're working for their respected companies, and they kind of look at me to see like, okay, what's Ray doing right now? Like, okay, I know 2 years from now, I should be around the same path. So I would say he's the person I look up to the most.
Awesome. All right. Have you ever experienced imposter syndrome in the aerospace field? And if you do, how do you deal with that?
Ooh, imposters. Uh, Can you explain imposter syndrome to me?
Like feeling like you don't belong
Oh,
in
okay.
your field, that kind of thing.
So I would say it could be. I would say I have felt that because, like I mentioned before, I'm not the most technically savvy person ever in the room. There are guys at work who have PhDs working on the same program as me, and they really do feel like you could be just a number at times. But then you start to realize that they don't need you for your technical skills. They need you for your passion because you know that they know that they can find anybody with a degree or with this knowledge, pick them up from the streets to kind of work on these tasks. But they need these people with the passion to really know that this job needs to get done. We need this plane to fly, to be on the team to make sure that this plane sees itself through its entire life cycle. And so I remember once I started to realize that maybe probably like a couple 3 4 weeks or a couple weeks into my actual full-time role, once I realized that, it has been great because it no longer bothers me seeing that people know more than me, and at the same time it's cool because they know I'm not the smartest in the room. Everybody is so welcome to teach me so much because they know, like, hey, I know all this information, but you have the passion, you're going to take this and run with it. I don't like to speaking to customers and speaking in front of people, but if I teach you this, can you tell them this is what I'm doing? And so having that passion, it doesn't just carry you through college, but it's going to carry you throughout your entire career. And a lot of times, I don't know, who knows? I'm still a very early career engineer, but I personally believe that most of the leaders that you see throughout all the companies around the country, these are the same people who are just passionate little kids when they were younger.
All right, and then we have a question from the Twitch chat that says, how much of a factor does cost of living play into choosing a job based on location?
Okay, so I will say for the most part, I say cost of living should play a factor, but at the end of the day, you're only you're only young. You're only young once. You're only in your 20s once in your life. For example, obviously the cost of living in California, excuse me, is a lot higher than some states in Florida, and where most companies they do compensate for that. So like there is a pay increase. So for the most part, they do try to match as much as they can. But at the same time, you really only see the cost of living factors if you do the math and do the research. That's really only when you buy a home, for example. So like if you're looking to buy a home as soon as you graduate college, then yeah, you should definitely consider cost of living. But if you're just someone you're trying to explore somewhere new for the very first time, like you're not worried about that. Most of these positions, I mean, they definitely pay you well enough to where you can like just live your life without worrying about any financial burdens. Like you can make all your bills automatic. You can, have money to splurge on the weekends. You can do whatever and not have to worry about any stress of that. So definitely doesn't matter where you are. If you can do it in Los Angeles County, you can definitely do it anywhere else around the country. So I'll say for me, cost of living hasn't played too much of a factor because I signed up for two things. I signed up for the the cool job, the coolest job I can ever think of, and I also signed up for the location. I definitely think where you live is super important because at the end of the day, you're only going to work 40 hours a week. And in a week, I mean, you guys do the math, 24 hours times 7 days a week. There's a lot more hours in the week than 40. So you definitely want to make sure that what you're doing outside of work is very fun. And I tell this to all my mentees. I tell this to anybody who needs to make that decision with, do I move to Southern California or do I move to Wichita, Kansas, where they're paying me a lot more and rent is half the price? I tell them, oh, all right, you go to Wichita, save up for your house. That's great. But you don't want to have that regret later on down the line. And you want to really use the time that you have to really live your life. I mean, unless California isn't for you, but if you know you're going to enjoy California, you love the beach, you love surfing, then go ahead and do that. Go ahead and do that, do it while you're young. And that at least you can tell yourself, hey, I have no regrets. At least I did it. And the same thing goes for some of you guys who have been in Florida your entire lives, who you're trying to decide on whether I should take that position internship outside of the state of Florida. Go ahead and go do it. Do it for a year. Do it for a year, maybe 2 years, and then if you don't like it, come back. Trust me, I mean, you'll be surprised at like how much you can do in such a little amount of time, and you can at least tell yourself if you go out there that, hey, I've done it, and you won't be sitting back here like should have, could have, would have, or what if.
All right, and then one more question. Since Skunkworks is R&D heavy, is it necessary to have a graduate degree like master's or doctorate degree, or will a bachelor's degree with experience suffice?
So bachelor's degree with experience suffices. That's a quick answer, but and it all depends on really what you want to do. So um, for me, I I tell myself that I want to touch as many different airplanes as possible, with doing as many different things as possible. And my biggest skills personally for me, it's kind of my communication skills and my passion. My passion really is my biggest skill. And doing that, I can go and touch a whole bunch of different things and really work on a lot of different projects. But if you have one particular thing that you want to do, you want to be the lead thermodynamicist for propulsion engine for X blah 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 blah, and you want to do that, then you start working on it with a bachelor's. They will take people who are with undergraduate degrees alone. But once they start training you up on it, you start to realize yourself that like, hey, if I want to know more about this, I need to go pursue my master's and learn because a lot of times you're working and like most of us, you're working on something cool. Your textbooks aren't going anywhere, except this time you're not being tested on it. You kind of have your textbook at your desk, like, oh wait, what was that formula again? You're like, all right, cool. Let me put that in the code, or let me make sure I put that into my model or whatnot. So it really depends on what you do, but there's a lot of positions where you only need a bachelor's. I would say in terms of the percentage, I think like I would say it's like 80-20, 80%. Well, at least for younger guys, 80% bachelor's, 20% has their master's and PhD, and those are kind of like the subject matter experts. Unless you're doing the fusion program, which that program has mostly PhD people, but that's a whole different story.
All right, and then let's wrap it up with this final question. If we didn't get to your question, you can put it in the Discord. Rayon is in our Discord, and I believe he'd be happy to answer a few questions over the next few days, as well as he shared his email address if you guys want to email him. So, the final question is, what do you think made you stand out of all the applicants? And what advice do you recommend to future applicants trying to apply to Skunkworks or Lockheed Martin in general?
So one of the biggest things that stood out is AIAA UCF. The organization really sells itself. Unless you've been to a different university and can compare AIAA to another university, something to you that feels like very normal of, okay, I'm going to do these design projects while I'm in school. A lot of other universities and schools don't have that. So them seeing that on your resume, like, wow, you have been doing all these hands-on projects since your sophomore year of college, like that's automatically to make you stand out from someone who just did it as a capstone, because that tells this particular company this isn't just someone who did this project because they had to do it in order to graduate. This tells them this is someone who did this project because they literally are passionate and really enjoy what they do. Especially when you get to the interview phase, when they say, hey, tell me about this project, tell me about this project, like you're gonna have so much to talk about. You can go on hours and hours, and they're gonna cut you short, but they know, like, all right, I like this kid, I need this kid to be on my team. And like I pretty much like I said, they as a manager, you can 100% read the passion in someone. Not only from, of course, if you can get the interview, it's great, but a lot of times you can really tell that on your resume. You can tell when someone is BSing a resume, they're just throwing out fluff. You know that they're really, they really worked on a lot of things, but you can really tell based on someone's resume, like how passionate they were. And to kind of show you guys some of that after this presentation, I actually want to show you guys a resume that I use when I applied for full-time full-time positions. And for the most part, you're just going to see AIAA UCF projects, hovercraft, rockets, Mars rover thing that we did, and you're going to see that the way that I was able to word it out in a way that it made my resume very attractive to a lot of recruiters. And then once you meet them in person, just to be able to talk about what you did, it's so easy. You're not faking anything. You don't have to practice talking about your experience because you know everything, especially if you enjoyed it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Ray, for talking to us today and for taking the time out of what I know is such a busy schedule working at Skunkworks.
No, not a worry. Just want to really quickly thank you guys again for having the opportunity to bring me back. I personally, although I did so much with AWCF, I never saw myself ever being a guest speaker or at least being someone who can actually help the next generation. So I want to thank you guys for all the audience. Thank you guys for tuning in for X amount of time. I mean, it really means a lot for me, and definitely I want to personally take a look for all the people who send out these resumes, and even if you don't get something within the next couple weeks or months, like I'll definitely always remember your name, and next time and if I ever see you at a conference, I'll definitely be sure to pull you and be like, hey, we need to make sure this guy or girl gets this position because this person went above and beyond to watch this Twitch video instead of being on social medias and whatnot. So it really shows that they're passionate. So
Mhm.
thank you guys so much again. I'm looking forward to speaking with you guys sometime in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much to everybody for tuning in today and for hearing about our club updates and also for staying for Ray's speech. It does mean a lot to us at AIAA, and we appreciate your support.